Beyond this gate, find gardens green and epic worlds to fill your dreams.
Were the worlds epic? I guess they're pretty epic.
They are pretty epic.
We had some pretty epic times.
We had some very epic times, I think.
I feel like social media is filled with people using that.
Yeah.
But somehow I feel like...
Epic day. I'm like, no, we did. We did have an epic day.
Well, among
Several
our days, we had epic times.
Yeah.
There were some not so epic times.
There were some not epic
but
times,
overall,
for sure.
I would say Epic Universe is pretty epic.
By and large, it's pretty epic.
And did you know that pretty much the e-ticket everyone is talking about right now, for various reasons, partially because the virtual queue is a hot mess, but also because it is just so cool, is that Universal actually developed a unique ride system specifically for Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry.
It's a great ride.
It's a great ride.
It's very cool.
I think that the hype is real. Again, it's pretty much a nightmare to get a VQ for the ride or get on the ride, or even when you have a VQ, there's no real way of telling you if you're going to ride it. But if you do get a full ride through, it really is one of the most spectacular dark rides that has ever been created. And yeah, the hype is real.
It's always exciting. Amazing when they invent a new medium, you know?
100%. It's like one of those things where I wasn't even sure how it was going to work because there have been so many patents over the years. And then riding it and then actually feeling the motions of the ride vehicle, seeing the scope of the dark ride. Of course, we're going to discuss this in much more detail this episode. But it really is something pretty spectacular and revolutionary. And as where so much in Epic Universe feels like a variation of something we've maybe already seen before. Roller coaster ride types we've already seen before. Dark ride types we've already seen before. Or entire rides that are cloned. Doesn't make it any less epic, but it is not necessarily something that we're not already familiar with. But then riding Battle of the Ministry and then realizing, okay, this is something that we haven't never done before, and we're kind of dark ride snobs, and then being like, all right, this shit's awesome. I think it turned out great, and Universal is something to be very, very proud of.
Spoiler warning.
This whole episode's gonna be kind of spoiler warning. So
spoilers.
If you're really excited to hear about Epic Universe and what's going on and what we think of Epic Universe, this is the episode for you.
This is it.
If you're really trying to avoid spoilers, but at this point it's kind of very difficult.
It's hard.
And it may not be the episode for you.
Yeah.
So, but I don't want people to tune out. So just keep listening.
Please don't tune out.
It doesn't matter if you know what's going on.
If you're going to spoil it for yourself, let us spoil it for you.
Yeah. Get the reality of it right now. And very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today is all about our epic times at Epic Universe. Start of Season 6. First episode of Season 6. We're wearing Epic Universe outfits. And we are very stoked to tell you all about this new Universal Orlando Resort theme park, which is located at what's kind of discussed now as like the South Campus. Because if you're not familiar with Universal Orlando Resort, it is kind of locked. There's a North Campus, the original campus, which has Universal Studios, Universal City Walk, Universal Islands of Adventure, and Universal Volcano Bay, and then
the
it
first
has
5 hotels.
The first 5 hotels, and that's all kind of in its own little, almost like triangle between roads, between Dr. Phillips, the neighborhood, and the I-4 interstate, and then Kirkman Road, and that is very packed. There's not any room for anything else in there, and so they bought land. Actually, they originally owned this land, and then financially they weren't doing so hot. They sold the land, and then they bought the land back for a lot more. Right by the Lockheed Martin facility here in Orlando, right by the Orange County Convention Center, not far from SeaWorld, actually. I think it's closer to SeaWorld than it is to the original North Campus.
In between Sand Lake and Destination Parkway.
And that's where there's a whole new resort complex with 3 hotels, and of course the park itself, Universal Epic Universe. And so we're going to be talking just about the South Campus today. Let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Besides that cheesy intro that we did, so I will say that the concept of doing the spiels on or whatever, like the welcoming messages on the portals, some are better than others.
The custom ones for the park are kind of corny. The other ones are like pertinent to existing franchises and stuff. Like I love like the one for Darkmoor. It's like it's alive. It's like that's great. But the ones for entering and exiting the park, and they used to be longer. They used to be like several lines long, and then for whatever reason, they decided to cut them to much shorter things. But
let's dive right into the first world, which is not as much of a world. Well, it is very cohesive as it is like the other portals, but it is kind of taunted by Universal to be one of the 5 worlds, and that is Celestial Park, which is the hub of the park.
The hub world. I think Celestial Park is overall a nice area. I think there was a lot of attractive ideas that were implemented adequately in this area. It's easy to walk around in. You're never too far away from anything because the hub is so woven with different midways and stuff. It makes the hub feel kind of intimate and kind of small in like a good way. There's also part of me that wishes that it felt like bigger and more grand, but I think the average park goer is happy that it's not a huge walking endeavor to get from any point to point within this park, and that has a lot to do with the way that Celestial Park was designed.
So I really do like Celestial Park a lot. I think it's probably not my favorite world because it doesn't feel as much of an immersive world as perhaps the others do. But what I do love about it is the cohesive aesthetic. I'm a guy that's all about aesthetics. Mm-hmm. If you have a good aesthetic going, I'm here for it. It kind of feels almost like a Jules Verne level steampunk with that bluish and gold aesthetic. Very obviously celestial, as the name Lily implies. It works very well. The statues, the waterfalls, the water features, the vegetation. While I will say that maybe the quality of vegetation isn't great, like shaded areas are much more needed than they are currently present.
It's a lot of concrete.
Of concrete. I think overall, and it will age very well because it is very cohesive. It is kind of timeless. It doesn't try to be modern. It just tries to be a certain aesthetic, and I appreciate that a lot. I think that between having a concierge desk located in front of every single portal, it's very cleverly set up. You've got a couple Starbucks locations. You have major restaurants, like 2 major diner restaurants that are table service. You have a couple of quick service restaurants. I think overall, and then not even mentioning the 2 rides there, overall it's a very pleasing area. I think they did a very good job, and yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think it's very refreshing in a way to have that be the main street. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. There's my one like key caveat with this area. I mean, like there's places that could use a tree or two. There's areas of concrete that feel like they should be broken up a little bit with more landscaping. There's a lot of holding guests at rope drop time in places that are very hot.
Yeah,
and
it's true because we weren't resort guests, so we didn't get to enter either Isle of Berg or Stardust. Sorry, not even Isle of Berg, Stardust or Super Nintendo World early, which is fine, except for when on one of our days we were sitting and waiting on the side of Super Nintendo World because we wanted to go to Dark Universe for rope drop, and just standing there for like an hour waiting for like park rope drop and not hotel guest rope drop. It was so hot, and this was only like May. It was actually yesterday from recording this. It was a few days prior to this episode launching. It really wasn't. It was early in the morning, and it was already brutally hot because it was just concrete. There's no shade anywhere. You're all just packed in there together. For Universal, did say like, oh, we want to put the park back into theme park. But as people that travel to lots of city parks all over the world, including lots of amazing Asian city parks and European city parks. This is not necessarily putting the park back into theme park. It is really more of like, I appreciate the idea a lot. It's just that it lacks enough vegetation and shade to really be like the city parkish aesthetic.
Yeah, I guess there's some areas that feel less like a park and more like a parking lot.
Yeah, the concrete aspect really is kind of a problem. It's gonna get hot in the summer.
Like the area, it's very pretty though. Yeah, and right in front of the carousel, like is just too much concrete. Yeah, and unbroken. I know that they don't want to obscure views of these attractions as you're coming down the midway, but there's just places that absolutely.
But it's something to say of having
shade.
Like dome roofs and the hotel and maybe like portals sticking out of like a lush foresty landscape. It doesn't have to be all bare just so you can see everything.
Yeah. My other issue,
I think with time it'll grow in though.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. I hope so because one of the things that sticks out to me with this park is, and it's probably just kind of comes with the territory of building a new park, but like there's things that Universal plans, and then like the state comes in and says you need to fix this, this, and this, and then they have to make adjustments pretty short notice on the fly, and they definitely clash.
Oh, talk about the fences.
Yeah. There's a lot of safety fences in Celestial Park now that definitely do not appear like they were part of the plan, and they really, in some places, really draw back from the experience, from like the beauty of it. It's just like garish, and it is what it is. Like
I didn't find them too distracting, but when you do look for it, it is quite obvious because there's some parts where I guess you could have fallen into the water if you we're so clumsy and inclined.
Yeah.
Or drunk by one of the 4 or whatever bars that are around Celestial Park, which I do also like that.
There's a lot of drinking that can happen there.
I almost feel like I'm at a water park when I'm at Celestial Park.
Because it feels like Volcano Bay's abundance of bars.
Because like at Volcano Bay, you have like all these customer service desks all around the park, and they have all these bars all around the park. It's a little formulaic, but it works. Mm-hmm. And now you have these fountains that look like really nice resort pools all around Celestial Park, and then you have these concierge desks all around Celestial Park, and then you have big restaurants, and you have walk-up bars. They're just walk-up bars that are just under like a canopy, really. Not temporary, like very nice permanent infrastructure, but you walk up to a bar, and then you find a place to sit around Celestial Park to drink your drink. Which I actually love that, but it does feel a lot like a water park.
We went to Zenith Bar and got a really nice cocktail.
Right by the Metro Gastropub.
Meteor Astropub. Yeah.
Astropub, whatever.
And we ate at their very ample outdoor seating area with our cocktails, and it was like very quiet out, and it was nice. Really pleasant.
The staff was really nice.
Yeah.
So something else that food and beverage wise in Celestial Park, so we went to Pizza Moon, which I found it a surprisingly fun restaurant.
It's cute inside.
Yeah, it's like thematically very different. That really has
that Jules Verne
has
edge
that
to
kinetic energy to it. It's like cheeky, but cheeky in like old sci-fi cheeky.
It has this Victorian theater troupe kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's like they're all putting on a show, and there's like backstage, front stage, lighting,
and it's all pizza themed.
Curtains
it's so funny,
stuff.
Really,
it's such a funny choice, but it's great because it's just different. Was good. And the food was good.
The food was good. I liked it better than some of the other restaurants that we'll discuss.
But then there's some people like Jonathan had such a tough time with it the other day.
But the other day was also when everything was down.
That was a bad day.
So like everyone was just eating, I guess.
There's some tough days.
That
this park is having.
I guess we might as well address the elephant in the room. Like as of recording this, which is exactly 2 weeks prior to the official opening. To me, it doesn't feel like Epic Universe is quite open for opening.
No.
Like it took us 3 whole days open to close there to get everything in and also like do some rewrites and really kind of experience the park. Which I think even on like a regular operating theme park would be a similar timeline.
Yeah.
But it was mostly actually just because of the sheer amount of downtimes, operational struggles, and like all aspect of the experience. And of course we went to rehearsals because by the time this episode launches, the theme park isn't even open yet. But at the same time, we're so close to opening and we have witnessed it like a month apart and then like another week apart between our visits, and it hasn't felt like it has vastly improved except for Ministry. Ministry went from like being absolutely not open to the public because they simply couldn't even put a vehicle through the ride building to actually using both stations on our visit yesterday. But all things considered, I think they're not quite ready for opening. Anyway, let's move on to the rides of Celestial Park. Let's start with the Constellation Carousel.
You don't want to start with Astronomica?
The closed
attraction.
The closed splash pad.
We don't have. There's nothing to talk about.
No, it's a splash pad, and it doesn't splash currently. So.
Yeah, It's goofy that they even have a name for it and call it an attraction because even by the measure of a splash
open a park
pad,
with like 11 rides, you have to do something.
It's barely even a splash pad. It's just concrete
fountain.
Yeah.
But anyway, right next to it is the much more exciting and cute Constellation Carousel, which does things a little bit differently than most carousels by using a big rotating disc with on that 4 or 5 rotating smaller discs that rotate in the opposite direction, and then of course you have your creatures that you sit on move in and out of the ground, up and down. Some are more traditional seating styles of a carousel where you sit on your own, just like holding onto the pole. Some have 2-seaters that are like that, and then you have a couple of 3-seaters which are themed to dragons.
There's a dragon. There was a peacock. There was
the Phoenix.
Pegasus in the Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, and so those are vehicles we can sit together, and then there's a little chair for a child in the middle that's like elevated. It's actually quite cute. What do you think of the ride?
It was fine. The ride itself is beautiful, and like the stained glass on that ride really works overtime because when the sun shines through it, it projects the colored glass onto the platform around the ride. So it actually is really quite beautiful. And then, of course, the lighting package is wonderful at night.
Aesthetically, super pleasing, I guess. Yeah.
The queue area is a little bare. I know it's easy to get spoiled when you have great queue experiences like Ministry and Mario Kart and stuff. But then some of the rides here, I feel like could just use a little bit more. Like you're under this dome that has nothing in it, nothing in the ceiling, whereas the ride has all of this stuff to look at in the ceiling. You're naturally looking up at the ceiling because like the ride begs of you. And then when you do it in the queue, you're not rewarded with anything. It's just nothing. So I feel like there needs to be like a chandelier or something in the queue house.
But besides that, it was a cute attraction. I mean, the ride cycle was okay in length. I thought it felt unique enough. I wasn't like the biggest fan of it, but it was
quite
also
gentle,
like a walk on.
A little finicky with the seatbelts.
Yeah,
they're having trouble. A lot of the cars are not operable right now.
Yeah.
Because of probably, I think, seatbelt related issues. I had a hard time getting my seatbelt pulled out all the way to buckle it in, and then when the ride was over, I had a hard time getting it unbuckled. There was a lot of like helping people get in and out of their seatbelt from the ride operators. But other than that, it's a really cute ride. It's different. I like that it's different. I love.
Has a very nice presence on the water with the fountains next to it. We actually rode it during like a fountain show happening, a daytime fountain show. So there's water all around us swirling, and I think overall, for being a carousel, which really it is what it is, I thought it was one of the nicer ones, and it fits very well with
I think it just needs just needs a little more time in the oven. A lot of stuff in this park does, but this one I think is lots of easy fixes.
Yeah, I agree.
And the fountains were great. I think especially the fountains in the center of the park. There's synchronized fountains around the carousel and also in some of the lagoons closer to the entrance of the park, but then they culminate with the big central fountain lagoon that is enveloped by Helios Grand Hotel, and that puts on great little daytime fountain performances like every hour. And then there's a nighttime show, which we have yet to see. It hasn't been put on many times yet.
Yeah, actually,
so far.
It was running last night, but we were busy trying to get on Ministry. So, and then the last but by far not least attraction here at Celestial Park, is Stardust Racers. And Stardust Racers is a dueling mech launch coaster with a pretty much like signature move that is called the Celestial Spin, where two vehicles rotate around each other. One moves up to the top of the element within an inversion, while the other one just shoots up straight, and then the other one rolls down into an inversion, going back down, is where the other one has a straight drop. And Stardust Racers is one of the best coasters I think has ever been built.
It's a great roller coaster.
I don't want to hype it up too much, but it is truly a phenomenal coaster.
I would be jaded to say that it's not just a top 10 ride.
100%.
A top tier.
And it's all about that extra, almost like dimension of having the racing element to it. I think it's all about having not just two sides to choose from, because both rides are a little bit different, but it's that whole racing element just makes that ride so spectacular. It makes it better than an average coaster because it has an element.
It elevates it in a way that is hard to capture on a ride that doesn't have that. It definitely brings me back to the level of satisfaction that came from a dueling ride on Dueling Dragons, or when you get a good ride on Twisted Colossus, or even West Coast Racers. There's a great satisfaction that comes from that interaction with another train.
And then the coaster's long. I mean, it starts off, I think by now most listeners know what Stardust Racers does, but we'll give it a quick recap. So it starts off by kind of inverting on itself by leaving the station and rolling into a turn that brings you to below the station. That's where you line up pretty much, both sides. And then you launch. That's also actually where the transfer tracks are hidden, where the trains would then be moved in and out of the maintenance building. That's actually underneath the ride station, and it's also where the launch is, for the first launch for the ride. And then you launch into a super steep vertical airtime hill that's like a top hat, and that is completely vertical going up and completely vertical going down. And then the valley after that is very sharp, very intense, followed by another move up, and then the trains kind of split up by diving in opposite directions going down, and then via a couple of airtime hills, you race each other by having airtime hills above or below each other, and then eventually at the top of the ride, or the front of the ride, right where Celestial Park is, you race past each other in opposite directions, and then you line back up again after another airtime hill into the second launch, which is then followed by the Celestial Spin, followed by a giant overbank turn, a giant airtime turn. Here you're really just parallel racing, and then you have a couple more airtime hills where you pass over each other, and then you hit the brake run. It's a very long ride.
It's a very long ride. It's fast, definitely as long as Velocicoaster.
Yeah,
if not longer.
It was kind of funny because we did a poll on our Instagram stories, and it looked like when we asked people, okay, if you've ridden both Velocicoaster and Stardust Racers, which of the two do you prefer? And it was actually 50-50 exactly. We had maybe couple hundred voters, and it was exactly 50-50, which was pretty crazy. And then we also asked people which side they prefer. They prefer yellow or they prefer green on Stardust Racers. And then we also had a couple hundred voters, and surprisingly, 66%, so 2/3 of the people actually voted that they preferred
the green
side.
And we're Team Yellow.
We're Team Yellow. We're Team Yellow all the way.
And like our friends are Team Yellow. Like, so
if you're not Team Yellow, what team are you?
Team Blue.
So I personally think I'm personally Team Yellow, and I think Yellow's better because it has sharper airtime hills. And then when you do the celestial spin, which is where the biggest difference in the whole ride really comes in, is that on Team Yellow, or I keep calling it Team Yellow, on the yellow comets, on the yellow track, you launch up first. You have almost like a sharp airtime moment at the top, and then you do your dive down.
Yeah.
And we've ridden both sides a couple times, and I definitely think that it's the better side.
I mean, they're both so good.
Of course, they're both very good.
They're so both amazing. Like, it's hard to lose, and there's things about the green side that I crave that I don't get on the yellow side. Like, the double up over the entrance plaza on the green side is really great.
Yeah.
But then I just think the yellow side culminates better at the end with the dueling aspect of it. There's
and also
moments.
like that the yellow side has that track piece that pretty much rides the roof of the station. I think it's so clever.
Oh yeah, where it hops over like diagonally.
Yeah, it hops over
that
the
is
station
yellow side,
and it runs like over the station.
Yeah. They're different enough that it feels like two different rides, which is so great.
Nice. And now they actually added, so when you get up, so the system is you wait in your line, and then you use your locker, which is all facial recognition, just like Universal Studios Beijing. And then you go upstairs, go through the metal detectors, and then you pick your line. And then you pick, which at this point you're like a couple trains away from riding. You pick either yellow or green, but prior there was no signage of which was which, and people were just getting in whatever line. And now they actually added signage saying like yellow.
Yeah, they
green.
realized after the fact that that's
people
something
really
that people
were
really care
trying
about.
To figure out which side they were riding. So
yeah, they've got little temporary floor signs. I hope they add like permanent ones hanging over it or something.
Some cute like, because everything in the station is pretty cute. It's very minimalist. It's very much the aesthetic of Celestial Park. There's like a giant hangar for like a celestial, almost like a meteor comet themed,
like a blimp or something.
With cool LED lighting, all that stuff.
It's very Visionarium.
Yeah, but I kind of like it. I really like the aesthetic of it. Thematically, the ride is nothing. Let's be honest. It's not anywhere near as well themed as Velocicoaster is. This very much feels like the Hollywood Dream of the park, or the Rip Ride Rockit of the park, where it's like this is the major coaster. And it's like a very simple aesthetic where like it's clearly for throughput. This is where they're gonna be able to run 8 trains at a time, and when everything else is down in the park,
we call it a sponge.
They're gonna be putting everyone in Sponge Dust Racers, and that's it. Star Sponge Racers, whatever you want to call it.
High capacity rides that just eat people.
But at least it's not like a high capacity waste of time.
Yeah,
it's like a really good ride.
I'm not even mad. Like, I love that the ride is what it is, kind of unapologetically and unabashedly. It's nice that Universal admitted to themselves that, like, sometimes you just build a coaster that's a coaster, and you do a really good job, and it doesn't matter that it's not some storytelling machine.
Yeah.
It has a story. It has its lore. It's, like, sort of themed as transportation. Like, the Celestians use the comets to get around.
Yeah, they lasted them down, and now you get to ride them.
When you walk into the station, it feels a little bit like a train station, like a fancy
metro station,
like a fancy metro station. So there's a little bit of the story. It has a component, but it's not like the ride has a story arc with a beginning, middle, and end. It's really just an aesthetic. It's a coaster. It's a nice aesthetic.
And it has like onboard audio. It's just like a celestial little score. It has really pretty trains that light up at night. Yeah. It's all on aesthetic. But this time they did it well.
It's exactly what it needs to be.
Because Hollywood Dream and Universal Studios Japan was all about an aesthetic too.
Just an aesthetic.
They had onboard audio, but the rest was just like, it was all Art Deco. It was like an Art Deco roller coaster that was just Art Deco.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what
sometimes
this is
when they don't over-labor themselves with justifying the existence of something, they actually get it just right.
It does kind of works. And that's actually, I think, some of Universal's strong points. Like, yeah, they don't necessarily theme everything, but if they can stick to a good aesthetic, they make it look very clean, it's a high-capacity roller coaster, for me, that's enough. That works for a Universal park. But we're already moving through this episode so quick, so let's go ahead and dive into the portals from within Celestial Park. We're going to start off by entering the How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berg portal, which I think it says on there, we have dragons.
Yeah, it's like we, my friends, have dragons, right?
Yeah.
I've never seen any of these
before
movies.
The episode, and I completely forgot to.
You've seen these movies, right?
I've seen the first movie, in IMAX.
I've never seen them.
Yeah, I was like a little kid. It was in Dutch. So
I saw the trailer for the live-action adaptation of the first movie. It looks really nice, and the fans.
The music is the most I remember.
Yeah,
but I think, and it's gonna be like, I guess I'm saying this right now. I think it's the nicest portal.
I think overall,
like the nicest the world. In Epic Universe. I'm saying that because it feels the most
fleshed
grand
out
and fleshed out. It also has like space to breathe, which is honestly the only one where it really feels like there's space to breathe. And it has a lot of kinetic energy. There's dragons all over the place. There's like animatronic dragons like breathing some crazy ice ball fog around the place. There is fire torches within the giant statues that are in the water.
There's the little baby dragons eating
little baby
the fish.
dragons that are like fighting over fish.
It's so great.
And this goes on around the whole area. There's like dragon tails in the tower moving around. And then there's of course dragons attached to the Dragon Racer Rally ride vehicle. So it looks like there's dragons soaring through the sky. We haven't seen the drones yet, but I'm sure those will be happening at some point.
We also haven't done the meet and greet, but I hear it's great.
So there's lots to do and lots to see.
Yeah, as for an area, I mean, so there's a meet and greet, there's a full stage show, which we saw the version of it in Beijing. So we haven't seen it here, but if it's like the one in Beijing, I know it's pretty solid. There's a big play area, and then 3 full rides, like full ride experiences, and then 3 places to eat. We haven't eaten anything in this area.
And then there's that Viking training camp for kids.
Yeah, the big play area. Yeah. We haven't eaten anywhere at this area of the park. However, we've heard really good things about the mac and cheese cones.
Yeah, that's like everyone's biggest hype.
Hooligans Grog and Gruel. Those are apparently really great. So if you're looking for like a good walk around carby snack, like I guess that's the spot to hit.
And this was also the land with the most walk around characters. Speaking of walking around,
Oh yeah,
because this land has like all these walk around characters. I wish I was better at naming all the characters, but of course there's the meeting group with Hiccup.
I know the girl is named Astrid,
and
right?
Astrid,
yeah.
And then there is like the twins that are like super. You know, there's the twins, and there's the goldsmith, and then there's a lot of walk around characters, and they even have the walk around robots. Which are cool.
Yeah, they've got a lot going on in this area, and I feel like it feels like the most full and complete. Like Ministry might be more beautiful, but right now it's just inadequate, like in the attraction department. And then like Super Nintendo's got a lot going on, but it feels a lot smaller. This area just feels like
because it has
big.
The ride roster, it has a good show, it has a major roller coaster, it has several good dining locations, and it also has room for like a lake in the middle. So. It's not very big, it feels really grand.
It's the only one of the portals that doesn't have a dark ride, so it kind of compensates for that by really filling out every other possible like box. So as for the rides, there's Fire Drill, which is a really nice looking Max Splash Battle. I love
which
the way
is kind of sunken.
Yeah, it's
in
sunken
the rest of the land. So like everyone kind of walks around it, and like there's actually some terraforming in this land. Of course, it's artificial because it's Florida, but. It's very beautiful. It's nice. You stare down at the ride.
The way that like the Mead Hall restaurant is terraformed like this big mountain sort of thing, and the rest of the land is kind of like bunching up to it like foothills is really clever.
Yeah, with the lake below.
And the midway around Fire Drill is in such a way that you can like look down on the entire ride and admire it from a safe distance, which I think is wonderful. We haven't ridden it because it's a splash battle.
It was actually closed quite a bit too.
It was actually closed on our last visit,
yesterday, which is
there's technically 2 rides in the park that we haven't ridden. It's Fire Drill, and then the other ride we haven't ridden is Dragon Racers Rally, which is a standard. Technically, it's a standard Gerstlauer Skyfly. It's the most off-the-shelf, I think, of all of the rides here, but there's nothing really wrong with that. This ride, for me, is like this park's Dr. Doom's Fearfall.
Yeah. Though I will say, the reason it's not available on Express Pass for this park is because the capacity is so low on it. It dispatches, I believe, 12 vehicles at a time, so 12 riders. And there is 2...
whole rides.
2 whole rides, that are kind of racing, which is why it's called Dragon Racers Rally. But the capacity still is quite low. So when a lot of stuff was closed on one of our visits... that thing was holding like a 100-minute line.
Yeah, over an hour and a half. But it's a reliable ride because it's so straightforward. That's kind of the beauty of mixing these straightforward rides in with, the super elaborate dark rides, is that you get some nice workhorse, juggernaut rides that can run. Hiccups, has downtime here and there. It's not actually the most reliable ride, but everything else in that area is pretty straightforward. So it kind of helps. Again, it's all sponges. They're sponge rides, like sopping up the excess while Hiccup is going through its operational hiccups. Speaking of Hiccup, ride, Hiccup Swing Gliders, is a fabulous Intamin family multi-launch coaster. It's sort of in the vein of Hagrid's, but it's got more aerial stuff. Hagrid sticks pretty close to the ground for the most part. It's like a very terrainy type ride, and this is too because of the way that the area is terraformed, and you like dive under the bridge that goes over the lagoon. There's some great forces in this ride. Like it's surprisingly forceful. Right before the second launch, when you do the helix at the toward the front of the area, That's very impressive. There's some great little mid-ride. I get spoilers. There's some great little mid-ride scenes. One right before the first launch where Hiccup attaches your wings to your glider, and then Toothless like hits the button and sends you flying off on your
it's actually
adventure.
really, really good.
The onboard audio is cute.
Onboard audio is great.
The onboard audio reminds me a little bit of what Disney tried to do with the Incredicoaster audio of like dialogue and narration, except that this ride, Hiccup does it a lot better.
And it's a short enough ride to actually do that, you know.
And then the mid-ride scene where you do like a sort of partial second launch and then you slide back down, back into the scene, and the scene transforms, and then you launch a third time and you continue all the way through. It's very clever.
Yeah, very clever.
It's a nice surprise.
And there's like little animatronics in there. Mm-hmm. Overall, the ride's a lot more intense than you would think. You think, oh, like a Hiccup's maybe like family coaster, but the ride was pretty intense.
Yeah, it's not I thought like, oh, this is like the park's kiddie coaster. The park doesn't have a kiddie coaster.
Like the ride really, there was a moment I was like, oh my god, this is intense.
Like none of these coasters check the Woody Woodpecker Nut House coaster box.
Yeah.
Like
it's quite long. It has pretty punchy launches. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Kind of interaction with the area. Like Alex said, when it goes to the lake and has a little splash and then you dive underneath. The walkway. It's a perfect ride. It's very beautiful. It's not quite as long as Hagrid is. But I think it's kind of like the underrated jam. I think it's everyone's secret favorite now.
Yeah,
everyone's
because like Stardust gets all of the attention. It's also right next to Stardust. Stardust is literally like hovering over this ride in the background while this ride functions in the foreground. But it's actually just an underrated king. Like,
it's
and if it's running both stations with 5 trains,
high capacity,
it's a beautiful.
I mean, you'll see several trains from a distance like around the area.
2 or 3 trains at once.
Yeah,
easy
it's very good
on this ride.
They'll run 5 trains, 2 stations, and it's beautiful to see. It's a good capacity beast when it's running.
Yep.
Now we're going to jump across Celestial Park.
Jumping up to the other side of Celestial Park.
And we're going to enter the Super Nintendo world.
I think this is the area that a lot of people go to first because people love Nintendo. Nintendo is
you know what? I underestimated that a little bit. I kind of thought, okay, well, Super Nintendo, we've seen it before. USJ has it. Hollywood has it. Like, you know, I kind of thought that since we'd seen it before, maybe Donkey Kong would be very popular, but everything else would be whatever. No, I'm mistaken.
Everybody
this part of the park
Kart.
is always busy. Mario Kart has always a long line, and it's a pretty good capacity
always
ride.
Over an hour.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2 hours.
I feel like it may even be like one of the more popular rides in the park.
Yeah.
Maybe us enthusiasts don't talk about it as much because we have seen this before. Mm-hmm. But for the general public, Super Nintendo World really is like an attraction. Like
this area was such a smart, and it was just a knockout. Yeah. It's the perfect anchor. It's the perfect like marketing juggernaut for this park because it really, I mean, everyone in the park that we're seeing that's wearing themed stuff, I would say we're seeing even more Super Mario themed clothing and accessories than even Wizarding World stuff. Mario stuff has like, it really gets to people. Yeah. And it has the added benefit of being a clone of an existing area and a second clone of an existing ride in the case of Mario Kart. So like, you've already kind of worked out a lot of your new ride jitters and issues and stuff. And
also, if you're going to do something that's interactive and doesn't require waiting online, this is like a giant playground for everyone, like adults, kids. I mean, everyone can.
Even
play.
if you don't buy the like power-up band thing that
it's
like
still really fun
tracks
to walk
your
around.
Progress playing around in the area, you can still have a good time running around.
You can still hitting
the blocks and you know, exploring all of the little activities and stuff. But yeah, this was a really smart move. This area is crucial to the Epic Universe experience, not just because it's a franchise that a lot of people care about, but because it's objectively the safest bet in terms of reliability, because it's the only thing in this park that is cloned.
100%.
It's the only thing in this park that has already opened. The Mario Kart ride's already got a couple years under its belt in terms of the Japan version. The Hollywood version's like a year and a half old, 2 years old. I'm not even sure.
It's over 2 years old.
It's over 2 years. Yeah, so
2.5 years old.
When you open it the third time, it's a lot easier. There's not a lot of surprises.
And if there's one ride that's never down, it's Mario Kart. And Yoshi.
Mario Kart has its
moment, but of the major e-ticket dark rides or the e-ticket rides, it's always
of the e-ticket rides.
So far from our
has
experience.
the most uptime. And then Yoshi is just a capacity juggernaut because it never breaks down. It's not very interesting, but it doesn't break down.
I guess we can start with Yoshi. So Yoshi is a on-the-mover type ride where you sit in a really big Yoshi in different colors, either red, blue, or green, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have 3 eggs in front of you, and the eggs are either blue, red, or green.
On like a little dashboard.
Yeah, a little dashboard. And like once through the ride, you'll find each of these eggs. And then when you see the egg, which the ride's not very long, so like once through your like 2-minute ride, you'll find
there's like 3 scenes, and there's an egg in each scene.
And then you
basically
press the button that matches it. And if you press all of them, when you get to the golden egg, it is supposed to do something. I don't remember what it's supposed to do because we hit all the buttons, but somehow I don't think because when there's Mr. Toad with his little golden egg, I don't remember anything spectacular happening.
I think it has to do more with like having the power up band and having the app and like collecting the golden egg via the app or something. I don't know.
Well, either way, then you see the golden egg, or maybe everyone just sees the golden egg.
You get a little, it lights up a little bit on the front of the car. Like there's a little egg emblem that like glitters like with like a gold.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe that's what it was then, that we found the golden egg. Anyway, we found the golden egg. Whether the vehicle told us that we did or not. And the ride itself is you go outside, you have a nice view of the land.
Yeah, that's
Then you go into a little bit of a show building that's very short, and then you find the blue egg there. Oops, spoiler. And then you go outside again, and you have like another kind of like a U-turn scene, and you're back into the show and back into the station. It's very, very short. Yeah. But it fits people, and it's kind of a fun way to look at the land, because you also kind of get a sneak peek at Donkey Kong. Mm-hmm. But that's all I really want to discuss about that ride. It's there. I wouldn't wait long for it.
The queue isn't much. The queue's still better than Donkey Kong's queue.
But it's still like a Chinese kiddie
But it's still
queue.
Like not. It's not exactly an engaging queue.
I mean, it's all like it doesn't like it's not falling apart because it looks like it's all made out of like concrete that's painted over. But it's not much to look at.
It's just not
very much just like there.
Stimulating. It's just there.
And then there is. I want to talk about Donkey Kong next. So then, if you go into Donkey Kong Country, which is also on the lowest floor of the complex. First of all, you enter the complex by taking escalators up to the top floor, and then you make your way down 2 floors to the bottom of the complex, where there's meet and greet space, Yoshi, the exit of the land back into Celestial Park, but also the entrance to Donkey Kong Country, which is like a sub-land within the land. It's not that big.
There's a lot
going
big,
on, but it's not big.
But it's very compact.
So
I will say that I think going through the warp pipe after you go through the gate, like you go through the portal, I don't know if the whole like going in through the portal like achieves the effect that Universal is hoping that it does, because the goal is like you walk through the portal and you feel like you've teleported somewhere else, and there's only so much that you can do to achieve that effect. But because Mario, you go through the portal and then into the warp pipe and then like down the hallway, up the escalator, more hallway. Like that's the one area, one transition from Celestial Park into the land that really makes you feel like you've been teleported someplace else.
Oh yeah, I agree actually with you. I thought you were going to say it wasn't the case. I feel like because you go through the warp pipe and because you really, the scenery changes quite drastically. You cannot see the inside of Super Nintendo while also staring at the outside world. It's where like when you're in any of the other lands, you can see the outside world if you just look in reverse to the portal.
Also, the sight lines here are perfect. Yeah. You're in, because the area is kind of sunken with like 3 layers worth of like scenery and stuff enveloped around you. Like you really can't see out of it.
100%.
It's the perfect sight line. Like I feel like
it's funny because it's like reverse sight line. Like it's perfect when you're inside the land, but then also when you're outside the land, you can see too much. Like I can be walking around and I can see the clouds shifting, and I can see Mount Beanpole. Yeah. Like I can see all that from
when
like
you're in Celestial Park. There's a lot of sightline stuff of the other areas that remind you.
Especially if you're like Stardust Racer Station, it's like an
observation
deck.
You're not really like a universe away. You're just a walkway away, and the portal is there, but it's not like.
Which I feel like again, if the trees grow in, it may be better because they put trees around most of the lands, but then it's just like they're not grown in well enough. But anyway, so to go to Donkey Kong Country. That is actually
through its own little portal.
Its own little portal, and that is a self-contained land with the Donkey Kong Minecart Madness roller coaster, which is themed to the game where you jump off the tracks. And most people here probably are pretty familiar with the system where you have a fake track you can ride on, and you jump between the fake track and nothingness like water, or like you jump between track and track, or the track is broken, whatever. And then you have, of course, the coaster sits on a real track that's hidden.
Yeah, this
hidden is a big word.
The boom.
I feel like you can still see the track pretty easily, but maybe some people just are not that aware of that. I thought that because the coaster is so rough, it was kind of almost distracting for me looking at like the jumping aspect of it.
Unfortunately, I feel like what works best about this area is just being in the area and looking at the coaster
it's so
from
fun
midway level.
Oh my god, to photograph all that.
Yeah,
so fun.
Like just speaking from midway level and admiring the area, I like this area even better than the Mushroom Kingdom side of it. Because
I think it's because it doesn't feel as claustrophobic.
Yeah. Also, there's a lot more emphasis on real foliage.
Yeah.
In the Donkey Kong Country area, because there's a lot of palm trees. They're recreating.
Yeah, that's one downside of Mushroom Kingdom is because it's all thematic. It's also very hot.
Sterile.
It's very concretey. It's sterile. By putting actual foliage and mixing it with the blocky theme of Donkey Kong, it actually kind of adds. It doesn't feel
the water
as sterile.
Features and the foliage in the Donkey Kong area, I feel like, make it a much more comfortable area than like the sort of claustrophobic Mushroom Kingdom side of things. But unfortunately, that's like where the positives end when it comes to Minecart Madness. The queue is nothing to write home about.
Oceans of switchbacks.
It's tedious because the capacity is poor.
And the audio is on a loop, so it's like golden banana, every 20 seconds, girl. Like I'm not even kidding. Yeah. It's a lot.
And then you get on the ride. The vehicles themselves are comfortable enough when you're just sitting in them in the station, but like it all deteriorates very quickly once you start taking transitions mid-ride, because every change in direction, the vibration, the jolting. It's not even like a shudder. It's not like a B&M rattle. It's like
a jolt.
Every turn feels like a little car accident.
Yeah.
It feels like a little collision.
And it's not any better in like particular seat because you've ridden it in several seats and it's like it's the same.
Yeah.
It's bad.
My front row ride during the daytime was just as bad as my back row ride at night, except that the visuals on the ride were a little better at night because light pollution is a huge enemy.
I will say it's a very pretty ride at night, but here's my thing. What it's trying to achieve is very clearly they designed this system so that they can imitate jumping off of tracks. But because of the ride's layout, and it doesn't do a whole lot, the ride is not very long, but because it's so shaky and bouncy that when they imitate jumping off tracks side to side, it is so rough, it is so distracting that like I'm not even focused on the tracks.
What you're supposed to be enjoying is like difficult to focus on.
And the show lighting is not great inside the darker areas of the ride, so like you can't even really see what's supposed to be going on. And the ride's not very long. Yeah. Capacity is actually not bad because they are able to push these trains out like back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
Because it's like a continuous loading.
Capacity is good for what it is.
Capacity is actually pretty good for what it is.
It's just tough for what the demand is. It's very much like Crush's Coaster.
And then the actual queue is just nothing to write home about. Just like Crush's Coaster. But
for as amazing as Mario Kart's queue is, you would think that this ride, another e-ticket, would have a better queue setup than it has.
So to kind of put together in like a summary is I enjoy the ride off ride. I enjoy what it's trying to do. I enjoy the aesthetic. I enjoy almost like the water parkiness feel with the waterfalls and like it's pleasant. But when you're on the ride, I don't think it's worth a long wait. You have to do it once. Like it is kind of fun doing what it does.
Get the credit.
But you're gonna be surprised by how uncomfortable it is and how much it just jolts you around. Like it's not a comfort ride. And I feel like the actual jumping effect, having ridden in front row twice, being the first person to see the jumping, it's not that obvious. It doesn't feel like you're getting all that.
Yeah, and from riding in the back seat, I'd hoped that it would maybe feel somewhat smoother somehow, and it does not. There's no fixing that from where you're seating. So yeah, it's a ride. It's easy to appreciate this ride. The concept is to die for. The execution on a visual level from the midway is perfect. The water effects and watching the car jump, the hardware for the ride is really nicely obscured from the midway with like foliage and decorations and stuff. Once you're on the ride, though, you're behind the curtain as much as you're in front of the curtain.
Yeah, good point.
The areas that have like the big drops and stuff, the big diving like 270-degree drop off the first lift hill, like it's just you and the track, baby. There's nothing cute about it.
Yeah.
The commitment to the false track is
it's almost more noticeable off ride.
Yeah.
I almost feel like the whole jumping off the track thing is like so much more enjoyable off ride because it looks like
everything
it's
about
jumping
this ride
off the
is
track.
more enjoyable.
But on the ride, you're staring at that fake the real track just as much as you are supposed to not even notice.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then let's go to the next major dark ride. And that is the ride that's been cloned now for the third time. And
that is number 3.
That is Mario Kart Koopa's Challenge, or Bowser's Challenge in the U.S. parks.
Yeah.
Koopa, I guess, is the
Koopa
Japanese
is the name
version
of him in Japan.
And that ride actually surprised me.
Yeah.
So on the first 2 visits, it was like the last of my concerns. I was like, I can ride this in Japan, I can ride this in Hollywood, but I hadn't actually ridden it yet. Mm-hmm. And then at the very end of the day, we're like, we have like literally 2 minutes to like run from Donkey Kong. And we were like, we ran. And we get to the ride just in time. The goes a queue behind us. We get on. We're like the last pre-show and dispatch. And oh my God.
I was very pleasantly surprised.
So pleasantly surprised. First, I was like, why am I have to gonna wear like this AR headset thingy? Like I don't feel like riding a dark ride with something in front of my face.
I'm wearing like this Mario headdress, and then you put this thing in my face. I'm like, what is this?
And why is Mario Kart not like a fast-paced little ride? Mm-hmm. But oh my God, I stand corrected. Sorry that I ever thought that because I really enjoyed it. I thought that the physical scenes, which are pretty great, it's a lot of physical scenes that are very closely related to the actual the game, and in its later stages. And then you put the visors on to play the actual game, and by looking in certain directions, you can shoot, right? And once you kind of get a hang of that, we all did really well in our
we all scored.
Yeah, we were the only ones that had written
coins.
it for the first time. We all did really well. It's saying a lot because I am so bad at this kind of stuff. Like I am not good at the shooting whatever kind of ride.
Shooting darker, yeah.
But I really enjoyed it, and I thought that because the physical scenes could maybe have some sideline issues or maybe in them for too long, maybe staring at them without the AR glasses is actually a detractor. But because you had the AR going on and you're playing this actual game in real time, I thought that the blending of them together was actually kind of spectacular. Yeah. I loved it, actually.
There was a lot of mixed reviews about this ride when it first came out, and I think it was because people were adapting their expectations to the kind of ride that Universal wanted to make. Because there's, a lot of people associate Mario Kart with like this sense of speed and ferocity and racing, but for Universal, this was about creating a shooting dark ride.
That's very unique.
And so by emphasizing that aspect of Mario Kart, you have to sacrifice things. You can't make a roller coaster type ride that's also a shooting dark ride. I mean, you can, but it hasn't been done very successfully in the applications that we've seen. So they just committed to a dark ride. This feels sort of like an evolution of Men in Black Alien Attack. You've got two tracks side by side, two vehicles at a time, and they have slightly different tracks, and they're going through the same general physical sets, but there's slight differences, and you're just very busy with what you're doing on your visor. I just thought I wouldn't care or thought it would be just okay, but I actually really liked it, and I think that just came from having a couple years of my expectations being managed and being told like what to expect and like being really adequately prepared
POVs
for what it is.
You know, and it'd be like, all right, this is what it is. But the interactive element of it is so cute. And then I think one of my favorite scenes is the Rainbow Road scene. I think that was really where it highlighted that doing the dark ride scenes with the AR, for me, it all came together. Yeah. It's like the finale of the ride. And by having actual physical sets and having projected, real Rainbow Road elements and having also like light up pieces of scenery that do that, and then having it also in your glasses, it felt like I was really like on Rainbow Road, and it was very dark in that room. I was very impressed. Yeah, so it all made sense. To me, that's actually my favorite ride there. In that land.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. There's not really much competition, but I really loved that ride so much more than I thought I would.
It's kind of nice to be surprised like that because I don't think it's often for me that I'm like, oh, wow, this was really good because my expectations were like either low or they were just like managed, and I was actually they actually exceeded my expectations.
Really exceeded.
There's an episode coming up that is the next episode actually that is about a theme park in China. We went to Fancy Wild Ningbo. And there, it was another one of those dark rides where I was like blown away. So definitely listen to it. That's like a really scary dark ride, though. Yeah. But this is another one of those dark rides where like I was really like surprised. Like I need like once in a while I need a ride where I'm like so pleasantly surprised I get off the jumping. I'm like a sterile. I'm pretty much like a really monotone kind of guy when it comes to rides. I'm like, okay, it was good. It was good. But like I was hyped after that, which is so surprising because I didn't expect to like that ride that much at all.
Yeah.
And so
so from here we jump to the next portal, which the smallest, the smallest portal of the lands.
I think one of the most hyped lands beforehand. But did it live up to expectations?
I think for me it met my expectations. It did not exceed them. It's alive. It's alive.
Dark Universe.
Dark Universe. The village of Darkmoor. What's here in Darkmoor is really great. There's Dust Steakhouse. There's the more horror makeup studio. There's shopping. Like it's a really nice little plaza, but it's not full. It should feel bigger than it is.
When they announced it, I was thinking, okay, Darkmoor, Dark Universe. It's gonna be this whole town, and then in the town is this mansion, and then they have this roller coaster. It's going to be so great. But it's actually quite small. The town itself is practically like two buildings that face each other.
It's like the side. It's like smaller than the France Pavilion at Epcot.
Yeah,
like the front side of it, not even including Ratatouille.
It doesn't feel at all like a little town. It just feels like kind of like a wasteland. I hate to say it, but to me it all feels very
ghost town.
Disjointed. It's like a giant. It's like the land isn't even that big, but it's really just like the Curse of the Werewolf, and then a couple of buildings peppered around it, including a giant show building. Massive dark ride that is the facade alone is bigger than all of Darkmoor, which to me just didn't make a lot of sense. It was supposed to be this little town with this mansion in it, but it just felt like the mansion and like the shed outside.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just thought that was not as overwhelming
for the
as
shape
I
of the area is just a little bit off. It feels like the village should be bigger, and like maybe the mansion should be further away. Like it's just hard to do it this way. to do this.
What's there is good. I will say it feels qualitative, and it's...
And then you have, like, the Burning Blade Tavern, which is in the back, and it feels too removed from everything else that you're doing.
I think one problem here is with the Burning Blade Tavern being in the back is that now they added so much netting to the Curse of the Werewolf, you can't really see it when you're entering the area. I think it used to be, I think the concept was like, okay, it's kind of hovering in the back over the werewolf, and then, you know, like it would catch on fire, and it's really great, but now you have to really walk over to it to see it.
I think before werewolf was part of even the concept for this area, because this werewolf was the last thing added to this park before they decided to greenlight what they did, and I think the Burning Blade Tavern lost a lot of its allure by being obscured by not just werewolf itself, but then all the netting that they had to add to werewolf later once they decided that it would be too much of a risk as far as like loose items and projectiles and stuff. That's really like the big detractor for the area is werewolf. Because not only is it not that interesting or special of a ride, it's just a very straightforward coaster with 2 static Wolfman characters inside the little show building that's halfway through the ride.
Which, during the day, you blow through it so quick, it's hard to even see.
And then you have like a static
adjusted
gypsy character at the end on the brake run. This ride just feels so rushed. It's landscaped nicely, but that's it. And even good landscaping cannot save the blemish that this ride is.
And the problem is this takes up the majority of the land for this area. So like, there's only one little loop within Dark Universe. And that loop is pretty much completely occupied by Curse of the Werewolf on both sides. And then on the back side of that is the Burning Blade Tavern. And then you have, you know, on the other side of the loop is then, of course, all of the queuing in the massive mansion and show building for the Frankenstein experiment, which we'll talk about in just a second. But because Werewolf has all this netting added, and you can really see, okay, there was original fences around the ride
that they first added.
Then there was some netting around it for like maybe loose articles flying off. But then they added netting around every single piece of track. So now it looks deranged.
You're like riding in this trough of netting that comes up like above the height of the vehicles.
Which when you're riding, I will say is not as distracting. Yeah. Because you're inside of it and like, your other vehicles
are
looking
at it from the ground, it just looks it's such a overbearing, domineering quality of these nets.
So that's kind of a distraction. And then the actual ride itself, it's fine. Like it has punchy launches. I will say the spinning is pretty decent. Has a show scene that's kind of hard to enjoy. Does like the whole like swinging back and forth launch part. But the ride vehicles are quite uncomfortable. I don't know why they had to do it the way they did, because there was plenty of space underneath, but then the fiberglass really moves forward towards the riders to the point where like my knees don't even fit
like
in the ride vehicle.
That is hard on your kneecaps.
I'm tall, but even people that are like 6'1" have complained to me that they can barely fit with their legs in there because their knees are like just like hammered against the fiberglass shelves of the trains, and it's unnecessary. And I'm in so much pain riding this. Yeah. I've ridden a couple times.
Yeah, we rode it twice. I never need to ride this again.
Yeah. And that's not saying it's not good. It's just because it's so uncomfortable. And I don't think it's... If you're going to be Epic Universe, Curse of the Werewolf should not be your focus. It's really like supporting
acts. If you're coming here and you're a coaster enthusiast, credit and forget it.
Yeah. It feels like every time... It feels like it really is the purpose of there's multiple rides like this in the park, but the major ticket in this area is, of course, Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein experiment. And anytime that goes down, suddenly there's like an hour and a half wait for Curse of the Werewolf. Yeah. And that kind of makes sense because that's what the ride's good for. It's like put people somewhere. This is the sponge of Dark Universe.
It's the spongiest sponge of anywhere here.
But it shouldn't be a focus. Yeah.
It's clear, like, so originally when the park was being developed, this was going to be an outdoor amphitheater for a show. And I actually, on paper, like, objectively, I think Werewolf was a smart decision.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a coaster. It's cool.
It's not a very artistic decision. It's not very nuanced, but it is really smart because that ride carries that area when Monsters Unchained is down. And because Monsters Unchained is so advanced, not as advanced or as finicky as Ministry, but still the second most demanding ride in the park, it does go down. And I think... if it weren't for Werewolf, that area would really struggle.
I will say for Werewolf is good for that. And I also think Werewolf's queue is actually one of the nicer queues. Because if you look at
pretty.
Universal, I'm not going to lie, is just not good at queues. Like if we're going to compare them to other major theme park
companies.
The
outdoor part is cute. Yeah, you're inside and you're under the tents, it's a little
but it's still better than like Hiccups or even the queue for Stardust. Like generally speaking, Universal high capacity queues, and it's across the parks. Like Universal Beijing is particularly terrible for it. The queues are just miserable. And I do say that, like, for just, like, a roller coaster that's outdoor, their queue is actually not bad. Yeah. Like, landscaping, some thematic elements. Like, I actually didn't hate it. Yeah, I liked it.
But anyways, enough about the sponge. let's talk about
the E-ticket.
My favorite ride in the park, Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein Experiment.
It's my third favorite. Am I
Sean's
still
third
on
favorite.
that?
We have the same top 3.
I guess we'll release them at the end.
At least, yeah.
We'll give him a little spoiler.
So this ride is a beautiful evolution of the Kuka Arm dark ride system developed for Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. This is now the 5th application of this ride system by Universal alone, because the other 4 are all the Forbidden Journey rides that are peppered around the various Universal properties. The biggest difference in the way that this system is applied is that the Kuka Arm, the whole ride system, is canon. You're supposed to see the ride vehicle. It's a experiment. It's a machine. The technology of this catacomb Comer vehicle that they've developed, Dr. Victoria and Igor, is part of the experience. So you're supposed to see it. And in a way, I love that you get to see it and that it's part of the ride, because it is such a cool system. And like seeing like backstage photos, for example, of like Forbidden Journey, and seeing how massive the whole vehicle is and what a tiny little bit the little bench of 4 seats are that you're actually occupying. Like, it is really amazing. And I think it was worth the trouble. Like, it was worth cashing in on it and like letting people see the ride system for what it is. It's a ride system that is aware that it's a ride system. You're in this catacomb networking device thing. So they don't labor themselves too much with trying to obscure it from view, and so you get to enjoy it and see it.
100%.
And it's also kind of something that you have to do when you're doing a ride system like this, and there's no glasses, there's no blinders.
There's no sides to the vehicles.
See everything.
Yeah. So the premise of this ride is that Dr. Victoria Frankenstein, which is the great-great-granddaughter of the original Dr. Frankenstein from the franchises, from the classic movies, right, and the books, she is still pretty much in control of all the monsters in Darkmoor, and they all live in the catacombs, and they're all in her control. And even at the queue, it's really, really hinted at this, because all the monsters are like having these blue eyes, and they're looking at you know, the blue machinery. But the whole queue and the whole showboating and the whole everything is just like there's just blue lights like streaming around.
There's foreshadowing about Victoria's motives, whether she's a good person or a bad person, if she's a villain or a hero. Sean.
I don't like Dr. Victoria.
I think she's a badass.
She is a mean-spirited woman.
She is a villain, and she's a good villain, and we love a good villain.
She really traps a bunch of creatures in catacombs.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that all kind of allures to that, and then so now her latest experiment is to try and capture the last remaining monster that she hasn't captured yet, which is Dracula. And then, so during the pre-show, you have really impressive animatronics of Dr. Victoria Frankenstein and the new Frankenstein monster, new Henry Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. And then you board the ride vehicles in a circular loading platform, which is really cool. It's almost like an old log swoop or
it's
rapids
like a
ride.
big rapids ride carousel.
Yeah. And then you take off in the ride, and then the ride is just filled with animatronics. Mm-hmm. Filled with animatronics. Lots of screens as well, but most animatronics. And I think when it comes to technology, like the sheer amount of things they were doing with this, and like having animatronics speak to you directly with dialogue instead of it being screens, is actually really, really impressive to me. I think they did it very well. They threw so much technology and probably money at this ride. The execution of it, we're on different wavelengths on that. I don't
think you're wrong about the execution. I think everything that you've said about the rough around the edges nature and the sightline issues on this ride, it's not untrue. It just doesn't bother me as much because what I love about this ride, I love so much. And it really speaks to me as an enthusiast and as a fan of dark rides and as a fan of storytelling in a way that's different from you, and that's fine.
Yeah.
For you, the oversights, there's definitely some sightline issues on this ride. This ride is really rough around the edges in places, and there's times where the majesty and the dazzlingness of what's there is being really like it's the things that you're not supposed to see are really trying to take your attention away from the good stuff that is there.
Like, I am very much appreciative. Like, I appreciate so much all the technology that went into this, all the effort that went into this, the over-the-top amount of animatronics, the fact that you use this ride system but managed to create a different scene like every 10 seconds. That is something we haven't seen
Incredibly
before.
ambitious.
Like an epic, on Forbidden Journey, which is obviously the closest relatable ride to this, you very much have your transitional moments in the domes where they really, do that flying theater thing, and then you move into very large scenes with, then there's the dragon, and then there's the spiders, but like it all, you're under Forbidden Forest the whole time, then you're in the Chamber of Secrets the whole time. And so that it's much more on a grander scope on Forbidden Journey. Here, it's like you're in the catacombs, and it's like monster, and like everything moves along
overload.
at a very quick rate, and every 10 seconds, there's another animatronic in your face. There's another major event happening. Henry's killing off another bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Of Dracula. Mm-hmm. Like, it's happening at a very quick pace, which does require a couple of rewrites to kind of really understand what's going on. But, and that is what I really appreciate, and that is my epic. That is very epic. Like, it's very cool. But then there's a problem for me, and that is just that they had not concerned themselves too much with the sidelines. Like, there's moments where you're, for a good 10 to 15 seconds, facing or hanging at a curtain. Like, it's just a black curtain that's somehow lit up by, like, all this other show lighting.
10 to 15 seconds. It feels like a long time.
Maybe 5 to 10
But
seconds.
it's more like 3 or 4 seconds. And that's a long time on a ride that lasts a couple minutes.
And then, because they're resetting some screens behind you, there's moments where you're just facing an emergency evacuation platform, and you're just facing that before moving on to the next scene. So it breaks it up to the point where it's like, your immersion is just interrupted. Several times. And then there's moments where the show lighting is just not good. Now, this is not a problem unique to Universal. I've ridden rides with terrible show lighting at Disney parks, like Frozen Hong Kong needs to fix some of their show lighting.
Yeah.
But then there's one particular part at the end of the ride where, Victoria Frankenstein has her final big moments, and it looks like you can see the ceiling of the show building. You can see just a giant black curtain hanging from halfway down with some clipped on and theatrical lights that light her up, and I'm like, this is the most awkward looking dark ride scene I've ever seen. In the dark ride, it also has the coolest animatronics I may have ever seen. So it's like, for me, it's like a roller coaster of emotion when it comes to like the finishes.
Yeah.
Edges of screens being just completely exposed, like Jumbotron edges, like corners. So I'm like, why?
Especially at the very end, the ride struggles, I think, more than any other
part of the ride. Turn all the freaking lights off, and it would have been better.
There's 3 or 4 parts of the ride where the sightline issues are tough, but perhaps no worse than at the very end of the ride.
Yeah. But having said that, if it's your very first time riding, which for most people aren't going to be riding this back-to-back, this thing is going to have lines forever. Mm-hmm. I was so overwhelmed the first time. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe. I'm so overwhelmed. So much is happening. I'm seeing stuff everywhere, like monster. I had to ask a million questions because I was so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Of course, the more I ride it now, I really understand the story. Now I can follow each character along and what they're doing, which I like. But if you're looking for an overwhelming, high-quality experience, this is definitely it. It is just not the highest quality experience there.
I think, even though it's my favorite ride here, I wouldn't give it a perfect 10 because there's too much on this ride that needs to be fixed.
Oh, yeah, we were going to maybe score every ride
There's
here.
a couple of rides here that beg for, like, a scale of 1 to 10 kind of ranking.
Maybe we could finish with that.
Yeah, we can. We can do that.
Yeah.
And this one, as much as I am the biggest cheerleader of this ride now, because we've ridden it 5 times, and every time I think I've loved it even more.
I do like it more every time.
There's just too much of this ride that needs to be fixed. The good news is these fixes are just a few work orders away. It's a few months
turning off a few lights,
some fine-tuning away. The problems that this ride has are easy. They're cheap, and they just need some time. And what is working with this ride, what's good with this ride, is so well done. They have fleshed out great characters. Igor is a breakout star. His walk-around character in Darkmoor is fabulous. Dracula is a very well-developed character for this ride. The screen version.
The animatronic does not look anything like the one on the screen. The one on the screen is hot as hell. The one on the
also everyone's hot.
Looks like a clown.
Victoria's hot. Igor's hot. The brides of everyone's hot in this ride.
It's kind of a hot ride.
It's a hot ride.
It's a hot mess.
It's a hot mess. But I just think,
that's mean, hot mess. Maybe it's not that big of a mess.
My favorite part of this whole experience is actually the pre-show with Dr. Victoria, because I think her dialogue is really well written.
You just don't get along.
I think her voice, whoever is the voice actor for Dr. Victoria, knocked it out of the park.
Same with Igor, though. Both of them have great voice actors.
Yeah, even Henry has some nice development. We establish with Henry at the beginning of the ride that we're friends.
Yeah.
And then toward the end of the ride, he's like, Dracula's trying to kill us, and Henry's like, no, my friends. Like, there's just a lot of good stuff going on.
No, I mean, overall, in like the Universal Lights, I'm critical. And if you've listened to our podcast, of like 300 episodes at this point, I don't even know. We're critical. Like, we're critical people. We are critical about all sorts of stuff. I'm always going to be critical. And, of course, I'm critical of some of the smaller things. I think the general public is not going to notice anything I'm complaining about. They're not going to notice the black curtain.
Maybe they might.
If they do, maybe they don't have not much to compare it to. But in the lexicon of Universal attractions, I have always thought that Universal lacked the main departments. And I'm not saying that to be rough on Universal. I just think that what they charge for ticket prices come correct, right? But they did do this ride very, very well. I think in the total, like kind of all Universal parks I've been to, all Universal rides I've been to, this is definitely a top 5 dark ride for them. 100%, maybe even top 3.
Yeah.
Maybe, well, maybe not. Maybe top 4 or 5. I would say top 5 comfortably.
I feel very comfortably top 5. For me, I just feel very attached to this ride and the characters in a way that I don't often feel about rides.
And we haven't even discussed that this is not a franchise ride. I mean, in the way it is, but it's not like they're pushing recent movies.
Yeah.
It is like...
to Darkmoor's credit, that is a 100% completely original refreshing idea.
That is the only land that really feels... back to the land,
I
guess.
They're not recreating something that exists. They have built something that is new.
Yeah, and the dark ride feels like that. Like, you don't know what you're going to expect because you don't have a movie storyline, guideline to follow. That is something also we have to praise about this ride. It just feels like refreshingly... not so IP pushed.
Yeah.
And Universal has been very riding on IPs, especially ever since Potter became their cash cow. I mean, Potter saved the chain, and I love everything Potter when it comes to their rides. They've put a lot of money into it. But at the end of the day, oftentimes you kind of anticipate what's happening. You can anticipate the characters that you're going to see. You can anticipate everything. But in this ride, you ride it for the first time, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea. It's all original. It's all unique. It's all creative. It's really cool.
It's funny. There's dialogue in there that is really well written. Yeah. That's hilarious. Igor, like when the brides of Dracula are released, and Igor's like, they're all out, even the really ugly one. Like, it's just, there's just some really off the wall stuff that is being said between the characters in this ride that is just really clever and takes it to another. I'm so used to dialogue on rides being kind of hollow and forced and like the kind of dialogue that needs to be easily, quickly understood by a lot of people at the same time. And like, I get it. The challenges are great. It's kind of like the difference between like the writing on Spider-Man at Islands of Adventure, which is so funny, so sharp. That's really the feel of this ride. I would compare it the most to Spider-Man because it has a great sense of humor. It has great development of the characters in the ride. And then you have a ride like Transformers where the dialogue is kind of clunky. It needs to be translated into several languages because the ride is like kind of a flagship Universal ride. You don't get a good feel of like the development of the characters. The movie franchise is supposed to do that heavy lifting for you, and you're already aware of these characters when you're riding the ride. Disney did all of this work themselves. Universal did all of the work themselves. They laid all of the groundwork. It requires a lot of effort and care and time to pull characters out of thin air, literally invent a character like Dr. Victoria, and then by the end of the ride, you're invested.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible accomplishment.
No, it's nice, yeah. And it had a very lasting impression, I think. Yeah. Which, so all things considered, still high praise, even if there's like little criticisms. And then last but not least, we are going to jump across the park, or across Celestial Park. And we're going to be talking about the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, which is a very unique land that Universal's done where it's kind of an indoor-outdoor land. Majority outdoor. It's themed to the 1920s Wizarding Paris, kind of fantastic beast laden, with all the beasts along the way. And then you have your indoor part, which is the Ministry of Magic, the British Ministry of Magic, which takes place in the late 90s. So there's like a 70-year time jump. And I've heard a lot of complaints of people being like, oh, no, the time jump is not well explained. Universal's not even touching it. It's just happening. It's going from Paris to London, and that's just kind of it. But in my opinion, I think they did a really clever job. You have time turners as the signature. Everywhere. The time turner is the icon of the land. Mm-hmm. And then when you're waiting in the line for the Metroflu, because at one point we had to wait because the Metroflu thing was not working, so they had us all wait for the Metroflu before letting us into the ministry. And so I heard all the spiels, and there's the spiels about, which different departure Metroflus are now open. So, like, if you go into Africa, North America, like, USA, whatever, and then it would then talk about, like, brighter tomorrows. Like, we wish you brighter tomorrow. Like, safe travels and brighter tomorrows. Like, they're very clearly indicating that there's time travel involved with your travel through the Metroflu. And then the entire dark ride, it's themed to the time that
I'll admit, I was a skeptic when they had to pivot. When they pivoted from this being a Fantastic Beasts area to being a Fantastic Beasts and a Harry Potter area, I was skeptical that they would be able to do this in a way that did not seem like they had to make this decision last minute. And I'm actually really impressed that the whole conversation about time travel and time turners, they faced it head on. They were like, we're going to
They weren't shying away from it like people say it would.
They're like, the time turner is on the Chronos. It represents this entire area. And the ride is all about time travel. I get big spoilers, but like the whole crux of the ride being that Dolores Umbridge is escaping custody so that she can steal a time turner and travel back to the time of Voldemort.
Yeah.
It's like everything about this land is related to time travel and like
which is spectacular
existing in multiple time zones or timelines at once.
Because we'll dive into the ride a little bit later, but Alex and I were kind of talking about like, well, if you think of Ministry of Magic and you think of the movies, especially if you think about how they did Diagon Alley and really just framed it around a movie event, you would be thinking, okay, it's going to be movie 5, Order of the Phoenix. We're over here battling Death Eaters with Sirius Black along our side.
The big halls of the glass balls.
The big halls of the glass balls. Stuff. And then they surprised us by creating an event that is nothing like that. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. But back to Wizarding Paris, 1920s. The area is the first ever area, I believe, that Universal's ever done that is to scale.
Yeah.
So when you walk around the Wizarding Paris, 1920s, everything is like actually 4 stories tall. There's large restaurants inside. There is large shops and windows to look at. There's animatronics sitting everywhere. Lots of Fantastic Beasts references because really the land is like very Fantastic Beasts focused.
I also thought that maybe they were going to shy away from Fantastic Beasts more, and it seems like they're actually using this as an opportunity to elevate the Fantastic Beasts franchise.
Yeah, and they focus a lot on the first and second
Yeah.
movies, which are take place in Wizarding Paris and Wizarding in the U.S. And the really nice thing is some of the signature movie spots are there, like the entrance to the French Ministry is there, and you have a bar, and you have another restaurant, and you have another restaurant, and then there's like sub areas, kind of like Diagon Alley. I think as a land, the most
there's a lot going on.
The most detailed and perhaps even the highest quality
I think
land.
There's the most to do. I mean, you've got
land.
2 full restaurants. You have a bar. You have a wand shop. You have a candy shop.
Lots of interactive wand spots. They're all completely unique, of course, to this park.
And then you have the show, which is a huge focal point for the area.
The focal point.
A proper ride. There's a lot going on here.
There's
a lot more of real stuff here than there's a lot of windows, a lot of facades and stuff.
But they all have something to offer.
Whereas this area, it feels like
there's
a lot of windows too, but it's so massive that so much of this area is actually occupied by real things. We ate at the main cafe.
The cafe something.
The lair of the siren or whatever.
Yeah,
but in French.
Lair de Siren, whatever.
And we had a really good meal there. We had the viral butterbeer crepe. It was very good, but definitely very rich.
You had to share with 3 people.
I got a sandwich that was really solid. Sean got a vegan
stew that was very
lentil
salty.
Stew that was a little salty.
It was actually very salty. It was honestly not good. I'm not gonna lie. And then they kind of jacked up our beer order, so that's also not great.
Yeah, but we ordered this beer with cassis, also known as black currant,
like a black currant beer,
and then they claimed to have served us the correct beer, but
we ordered several of them, and we're all like, "This is absolutely not what that is."
Not
we're
even
black currant
an
experts.
iota of black currant.
But anyway, dress rehearsals. We're not going to be too critical of that.
The restaurant was beautiful, and you should totally eat there.
The prettiest restaurant. Mm-hmm. Oh my god! So, the tile work. I mean, the whole land. Spoilers.
The other restaurant is really cute too, but the focal point restaurant is amazing.
Yeah, the other one feels like it's Le Goblet Noir, I think. That one is
feels more like Lakey Cauldron.
Yeah, it's a little more like classic Harry Potter style. There's a more grungy back alley with old Parisian wood and clay buildings. That has more of and a
mysterious
like a tavern.
green guild mushroom that's dripping ooze.
Yeah, which I think is also
gotta be a movie reference.
That is more of like a classic Harry Potter style restaurant where it's kind of like pubby foods. But then you have your really nice restaurant with your more fancy food that is right in the middle of the area with outside terraces. You can sit out there. I mean, it feels very much like Paris, which is
Parisian
crazy.
cafe experience is happening there, and it's really well done.
And then they have a show which is
the Cirque à Canoe,
which is actually completely Fantastic Beasts.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Potter references or anything in there, obviously, because we're not in the Potter hasn't happened yet. Potter hasn't been born yet in this area, which is kind of cool.
They keep it very separate. I mean, even though they've earned their fluidity, they've earned the ability, I think. I mean, ultimately, this was the right choice. I feel like there's just so much. This area is so big that it begs of covering as much ground as possible. And it's worth covering Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter in the same land because there is so much. It's so big. You can do so much with it. But they do keep them very, very separate. So when you're doing the circus show, it's like this is a Fantastic Beasts show.
Yeah, and it's all that's actually kind of closely related to the movie. The whole circus tent, which is in the first movie, very prominent. And then when you walk to the queue, it's a very pretty queue. You have an outdoor queue with lots of details, and you have an indoor queue that has Of course, the circus tents, and then you have a giant pre-show, and then you have the actual show. So that is all very detailed, very nice. And again, it's very much the aesthetic of Fantastic Beasts because it's pretty much all that exists in this part of the land. The show itself has a couple of cool technological things going on. I think the blending of the screens with the physical like animatronics and sets is not as great, but like the puppetry and animatronics are pretty great. And like if you want a Fantastic Beasts show, you want something very different from like, you know, now we're on Harry Potter area number 3. It's kind of refreshing to have something that's very different. This area doesn't feel anything like the other Potter areas, and the show is just like that. It doesn't feel like a Potter show. It just feels like a Wizarding World show, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, it's a little short. I don't always have a lot of patience for theater shows, but this was one that I felt like for all of the standing in line and the preamble and like your outdoor queue, indoor queue, and then you move into this room, and you move into that room, and then you have a pre-show, and then you finally get to the theater where you sit down and watch the show, and then I feel like it's over.
It definitely feels like one of those Universal back-to-back shows where like they spend a lot of time doing the preamble because like by the time you're seated, the next people are already lined up and doing the queue and the pre-show stuff for the next showing. But all things considered, it's nice to have a Potter show. And also, this park just has 2 really nice shows, which is nice. It's
I think
nice
if you like Harry Potter,
or like that universe,
have to do this.
Yeah.
If you're not a Harry Potter fan, or if you're not invested in any of the Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts stuff, you're just kind of going to be like okay about it. But if you like this kind of stuff, like if you're really a Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts fan, like this is a must.
Yeah, and you know Newt Scamander makes an appearance, all that. So that's pretty great about that. And then you, of course, have the main attraction of the land. And I'm going to move my cat out of the way real quick. Please hold.
Our cat is about to walk in front of the laptop. And
okay, so cat has been relocated. Talk about a Fantastic Beast. We love you. Now we're going to talk about the like the real star of the park, the whole shebang, the whole show. Now, getting on this ride has been incredibly difficult. Days where it's closed the entire time. Yeah. I mean, by the time this episode comes out, it's closed for a whole week.
There's one thing that we'll talk about in like a chronological visit-by-visit order on this episode, because this episode is it's the amalgam of 3 separate visits. One during team member previews, one during the initial pass holder only preview, and one during the all general public preview. And it really took us 3 visits to do Ministry. Because the first visit, it was like, okay, you can walk through the area.
Which you were very impressed by the queue. Beautiful. If you had the chance to get through the queue, then still do it for sure.
And then, but we didn't even. Some people had gotten to see the pre-show with Higgledy. That was closed for filming on our pre-show day, so we didn't even see Higgledy until our second attempt when we were there for the regular pass holder preview, and we got our VQ, which is a challenge in and of itself. And you get to the ride. It was by this point they were opening the ride at 3. But then on our visit, it pushed it back to 4.
And then
they told us to come back at 5. And then we get there at 5, and it's like open. It was open for like an hour without issues. Our ride was totally jacked up. Like we got on, we did the whole waiting thing. Our ride was botched, but they didn't give us an immediate re-ride because the ride had already been down for so much. They gave us the little black fast passes.
Yeah, because the ride was, when we rode it, and like it completed a complete reset where every single screen, every scene turned off, and we parked and we drove through the building.
Maintenance lights, the whole bit.
So when we got back to the station, they didn't actually know about that, which was surprising. They're like, "Oh, you didn't like it?" We're like, "The ride literally." I mean, there was nothing even happening.
Get a ride.
The whole thing was black.
Yeah.
And so then they told us, "Okay, we're gonna call management because we're not doing rewrites today." We're like, so it was kind of a bad vibe, but at the same time, it's like we get it, dress rehearsals, we can't complain too much.
Yeah.
But then the management came down and said, "Okay, guys, like the ride's big down. It's gonna probably take at least 2.5 hours for you to even get back on if we reopen. So here's a ticket. You can use it anytime next month. You can come back." It's one of those things where it's like, well, then you have to buy another preview ticket because the preview tickets are expensive. Yeah. It's like $150 a pop starting.
So on our third visit, it was like we had unfinished business and like we paid full price and we were it was all framed a little differently. And the third day that we were there was the roughest day operationally. Donkey Kong was closed for filming.
Or maintenance.
Or something. Yeah. Stardust Racers was supposed to open, but it never did. Fire Drill, we weren't going to ride Fire Drill, but it only opened for like an hour.
Hiccup was down for about half of the day.
Hiccup was down a lot. Monsters and Mario Kart were down at one point. and then,
of
you
course,
know,
Ministry also
but the
went down a
focus
lot.
was Ministry.
Yeah.
And we were like, so we go to Ministry 3:00. It's open. It takes a while for us to get on, but we get on and we have a solid ride. There was a little hiccup right at the very beginning.
Yeah,
And we were
parked
freaking out because we were like, no,
not again.
not
you
again.
know?
But then the ride actually fixed itself, and then the rest of the ride went perfectly.
Yeah.
And then we turned around and used our second set of exit passes. We got one set for the bum ride, and one set for being dumped on our first night when we tried to ride again and the queue got dumped.
We spent like 3 hours in queue for that.
So we had 2 sets. So we rode twice between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. We got 2 good rides on it. And then we had gotten a VQ, and a friend of ours was joining us, and so we got in line for our VQ right at 5. And then the ride went down, and we ended up waiting until around 8.
Yeah.
And the ride actually did go back up. We
did wait like 3 hours in the queue, which was
so then we got our ride with our VQ, and then it broke down again like mid-ride. So we had another botched ride.
Oh, it's true. But this time it's going to be an isolated event, so they let us re-ride right away.
So this time they let us re-ride right away, and then we got a great ride.
So out of the 5 rides, 2 were completely botched, and then 3 were pretty much solid. Yeah. One had like a quick issue, but then it resolved
Our third ride and our 5th ride were perfect, and the 5th one was especially, like, the 5th one was the best one.
We were in the middle.
Yeah.
But having said all that, this ride is worth the trouble.
Yeah.
It's worth the trouble. Like, it is revolutionary. Like we mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, Universal developed a special ride vehicle system that's able to drop and move and bob among, like, 2 stories. Yeah. Like, you're in an elevator. This is spoiler galore, guys. Like, at this point, I mean, you probably have already tuned out at this point if you don't want to hear this.
It's called an Omnidirectional Lift vehicle.
Which is a fancy word for putting a lift that moves in every direction, which is kind of the theme of the Ministry anyway.
Elevator car that can practically has like 10 feet of articulation vertically and like laterally, vertically, so, like all of it.
To reel it back to where, you know, you're in the queue and then you learn that Dolores Umbridge sneaked into the Ministry, but she has been wanted to go on trial because of all of her crimes, right, in the movies. And so, you know, they're discussing how she so nonchalantly showed up and they detained her, and now the Aurors, you know, have investigated all of her crimes, which is Harry, Ron, Neville, like the Aurors now, which is post-movies. 1998 is the timeline officially. And so then we met Higgledy, which is her former house elf, and we join Higgledy and Harry and Ron and whatnot because we're going to the trial. And then it turns out that Dolores Umbridge escapes. Now, to get anywhere in the Ministry of Magic, you have to use these moving elevators to move sideways, forwards, backwards, whatever. And so that's what we're in. And so the motion of the vehicle really is exemplified by that. You go up and down, and you bounce, and whatnot. And that is such a unique ride experience because the scenes are so big, the sets are so big, and you do manage to drop from like a high, you know, from maybe, say, like a one story to another story, have that range of motion, and the actual quality of the sets, the rides, is just incredible. The ride has these massive 2-story scenes. Everything is lined with black tiles. I mean, I think I read some number that they use 8 or 80,000 black, like, of these beautiful tiles.
They're so pretty.
It's so pretty.
It makes me want to like redo our kitchen with like these tiles.
Magic, I guess. But you want to talk a little bit about your experience on the ride? So what do you think about?
I really loved this ride because it is so spectacular, and it really, like, it has a lot of polish, it has a lot of flourish, it does something really unique. All the scenes are so beautiful. Obviously, when it works, it's, like, fantastic. But then it's just also, like, very violent, and there's not really anything to hold on to when you're in the ride. Yeah. So I was kind of like when they tell you right before you dispatch, like, feet flat on the floor, like, your back up against the seat, and I'm like, holy crap, like, there's a lot of, like, stuff that goes into this, and there's rumors that, like, sensor issues with the seat belts and maybe even the seat backs, like, the seats have this ability to like sense that you're there. So, like, the ride is stressful for me, and it's also a little nauseating, it's dizzy, it's really violent. I was worried that I, like, would pull a muscle in my neck or something.
So dramatic.
But overall, it's just a great ride.
It's a great ride.
Very scary.
I think it's one of Universal's best rides that they've ever done. Just the sheer scope of this ride, it feels so much bigger than anything they've done. The screen blending with the extra animatronics is so clear. The screens are incredibly high detail that we're even having arguments about what's physical sets and what's not physical sets. We keep watching videos.
We've been watching lots of POVs.
We're like, okay,
ride.
So is that or is that not physical set? And the way that some of the the scenes on the screens and transition into real animatronics, I think that the overall ride experience is something that's unlike anything, and the crispness of the animations on the actual screens. And I don't want to give too many spoilers, but when you get to the time room, because again, a lot of it is time themed, having a giant clock swinging your direction, having a physical set clock, and then having parts of the building where there's like action happening between them with screens in the background. I can barely even describe the scope of this ride, but it really is, I think, Universal's probably strongest dark ride ever made. I think it is like the most, like the highest quality. It's very polished. So unlike Monsters, where there is a lot more animatronics, it's just incredibly polished. There's not a single second on the Ministry of Magic ride where you're not in the story, where it's like nice, where it's not finished off, polished, where everything you do, it just flows so well. Everything is just perfect, honestly, in my opinion.
They've made a lot of smart choices, I think, with like the sightline issues and stuff that a ride like Monsters has are not here. There's one moment where if you're going on the left dispatch station and you're returning back there, and you can kind of see the scene that has already happened with Higgledy and Hermione and the Death Eaters in the elevator leaving. But other than that, the sightline issues are pretty minimal. And as much as like Monsters has my heart, this is the dark ride that I would give like a 10 out of 10 to, because this ride, like when you invent a new medium of a ride, like it's unforgettable. Like it reminds me of like when they did Spider-Man, when they did Forbidden Journey, when Disney did Indiana Jones, when like Pooh's Honey Hunt came out, the first track was Dark Ride. It always feels so special when there's a new method of doing something like this that leaves a strong impression. And that's what I think is the biggest takeaway for me for this ride.
Yeah.
Is what they accomplished by doing that.
And for me, it's not just even the ride vehicle. The ride vehicle is very spectacular. And the range of motion, again, it feels almost wild that this giant elevator vehicle that you're in is moving the way that it is, like floating through the air. That is very impressive, and at some points kind of thrilling and quite fast. It is also just the simple blending of the scenes and the screens. The way that they managed to make screens fit inside 3D effects, where you have the elevators that are really just like animatronic elevators. They're on these Kuka arms that are moving around, and the screens that are blend off of them, they simulate motion where you really feel like you're flying through the Ministry, but really you're like stationary in a scene. And then there's foregrounds in the elevators, and there's screens, and there's all these physical props. And it all blends so well. It's almost like you would think, it's going to be flat. It's going to be flat when you have a screen. And I don't know exactly how they do it. I don't know how the technology works. But they managed to create this 3D environment by using a lot of screens, really, and just to create these giant spaces that you're in. And somehow, for the vast majority of them, it really does not feel like a screen. Like, you cannot tell where the physical sets of the Ministry end and where the screens begin. And I think that is so overwhelming, that the quality of that is so high that I don't think I've ever been baffled by a dark ride where you just really couldn't tell what was real and what wasn't real.
I think that's time room was the part that blew me away the most, because especially like we wrote it 2 times where like it revealed how it worked. Like the magic was revealed to us. So I'm like, okay, I can see where this is a screen and where this is a physical thing. And then you write it again like correctly. And I still, like, I couldn't remember. Like, it is done so well that, like, I couldn't even find my mental frame of reference from when I went through that scene twice where it was broken to remind myself where the screen begins and where the physical part starts. And that's what I think. I don't know how they achieved such a seamless 3D effect in that scene and like, with some of the other scenes, too, where it's just like, wow, like, there's so much depth, and, like, the moving along with the screen to create that sense of depth is such a, like, intricate. It is such a, it's hard. Like, it's very precise. It requires very precise movement.
And then you've got animatronics of characters where in the past we've never seen animatronics of Hermione or Ron or Potter or whatnot. And there's the Hermione animatronic. Sorry to break that to you, but there's several animatronics of Dolores Umbridge. And then there's also animatronics of Ron and Harry. And then there's, of course, all sorts of other animatronics like Death Eaters and a giant fantastic beast, magical creature that comes through. And even in a way, that even ties it all back together to the land, because there is a visit to the Department of Magical Creatures, which is really just like a fantastic beast part of the ride. And I feel like in a way, for me, that really even tied the Wizarding World outside and then the Ministry of Magic. It combined it for me. And it's like, all right, so this whole like animals thing is continuous. I just thought that they blended all very well together with the time turners, the Metro Flu announcements, the Fantastic Beasts that are on the ride and not on the ride. I think all things considered, they did a very good job. But not just the area, of course, but also with this dark ride is phenomenal. Yeah. So next up, we're actually going to go ahead and give every attraction.
Yeah, attraction,
like a score from 0 to 10, like on a scale of 10. And we're gonna just go around the park like a cute little, a little extra road trip, like a final road trip of this little park with all of you together. So we're gonna enter the park, and let's just start with. What should we start with?
Do you want to start like we're entering the park and
we're
then
entering the park, and we're just like, I'm moving along.
Where do you want to start?
I think we should start at the early admission.
Okay.
Super Nintendo World.
Okay. We'll start at Super Nintendo World.
So let's start with the first ride we're going to see, and the same level that we enter, and that is Super Mario Kart. So what's it called? Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge. I'm going to give that a... Are we going to be critical on this? We're critical people. What would you give it?
I would give it like a 9.
9 out of 10? I would give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And then... Yoshi, I would give like a 6 out of 10.
Wow, that's pretty generous. I was going to give it more like
still a ride.
Yeah, but God, it's so short.
Yeah,
I'd give it more like a 5.
5.5.
Yeah, we'll
Done
give it
deal.
5.5.
We can meet in the middle.
Because like Mario Kart, I think is really strong. And to be fair, that's actually the ride there that I feel like we've experienced the least. So I'm like, I don't feel like I can even articulate as much about that ride.
But
as
it's
I
all
can
the first reactions.
But I'd give it a 9. I feel like anything less than a 9 is too low for like what that ride does.
For Mario Kart, yeah.
Yeah, for Mario Kart.
But then Yoshi's a 5.5.
Yoshi's
Agreed.
a 5.5. Yeah.
Okay. For Donkey Kong, 7.
Wow, you're being really nice.
You're being really nice.
I would probably give Donkey Kong like a 5.
Okay, so 6.
So 6.
Okay, 6 out of 10, doable.
This is actually great. This is easy.
So next, Dark Universe. No, on the way there, so Constellation Carousel. Okay. I would give that a 6 out of 10.
I would probably give that a 6 too.
Okay, 6.
So we'll give that a 6.
Then Dark Universe. Let's do Curse of the Werewolf. I will give that a 7.
Oof. Gosh, you're very generous today. I would give Curse of the Werewolf like a 4.
Damn, that's hard math.
I know.
5.5, I guess, again. Wow, you're like really mean.
I'm not that mean. Curse of the Werewolf is not that good.
Okay.
You hate that ride.
Monsters Unleashed, the Frankenstein Experiment. 9.
Yeah, I would give it a 9.
9.
Yeah.
There's still so many issues for it to be 10, but it's a 9.
It's really close. I would even maybe give it a 9.5. I like it so much.
Okay.
I think I like it better than Mario Kart.
Okay, fair. Then let's hop around, and the next time we're gonna hit is Ministry of Magic.
Yeah.
So the show, Sukakanu, I would give that a 7.
Okay. Still very generous. I'd give it a 6.
Wow, you're like really on the low.
I'm really not. I'm amazed. I'm amazed at your optimism.
It sounds like you even like Epic Universe.
Well, maybe I don't.
Wow.
No, I'm just kidding.
So that's so you're giving it a 5?
No. You gave it a 7. I give it a 6.
Okay, 6.5.
So 6.5.
Okay, it's doable. Ministry of Magic. Come on.
10.
10 out of 10.
I'm sorry.
Look at that. We agreed on that. Even Alexander, who doesn't even care that much about.
I don't even like Harry Potter. I've never liked Harry Potter. I've never cared.
Amazing Dark Ride's amazing Dark Ride.
Higgledy
and amazing Q
is amazing.
And the Q's
it's really Higgledy's ride, and she's awesome.
She's badass. Okay, next you got Stardust Racers. I would give that a 9 out of 10.
I would give it a 10.
Wow.
I think Stardust Racers.
A 9.5.
I feel like for me to say that there's anything that could be done different or better about Stardust Racers is not appropriate or fair or realistic.
Okay, well, 9.5 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I still don't think it's a 10, but 9.5, and that's high praise. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we have Isle of Berg. Let's start with, this will, I guess, will be a little bit objective, but Dragon Racer Rally, I think.
Because we've been on these before, but this one looks really cute.
And the fit is good for the park. I think it's fun.
I think it's a nice, I think it's a great choice for this.
I would give it like a 7.
Okay, I'd give it a 7 too.
Okay, 7. Hiccups Wing Gliders.
I would
give that a 9.
I would give Hiccups Wing Gliders at least a 9. Yeah.
No, not higher than 9. Yeah,
not higher than 9. Okay,
no, because it could be higher
than
Dark. 9. Yeah. That makes me think that maybe my ranking for Stardust isn't good. Okay, I'm making Stardust.
I think having Stardust and I think Stardust being 9.5 and Monsters being 9.5, and Ministry being 10, and Hiccups being a 9, a solid 9, Mario Kart being 9.
Like, shows I think like that's the highlights
solid.
Of the park.
I think that's exactly.
So how about Fire Drill?
That then? Top 5 is looks exactly how I think
Fire
it should
Drill
look.
is like a 7.
Sure, yeah, it's a great looking ride. I'll give it a 7.
And then based on our experience, we didn't actually do one here, but based on our experience of the Beijing version, which should be a complete clone except for it being a Mandarin. I would give the How to Train Your Dragon, Untamable Dragon show a 8.
I heard the dialogue is really corny though.
Which is why I'm giving it 8.
And that's something. The dialogue being corny is something that would really bother me. So I'll give it a 7.
Okay, 7.5.
We'll say that it's a 7.5.
Okay, overall, the park I would give an 8.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'll give it 8 out of 10.
That's a fair 8 out of 10.
8 out of 10. My top 3 is in the order of Ministry, Stardust, Monsters.
Yeah.
Your top 3.
Mine is Monsters, Ministry, Stardust.
Still quite good.
Even though, now, you'll notice that I still only gave Monsters a 9.
Because objective.
I think it's objectively a 9 out of 10, but it's still my favorite.
That's fair.
It still reflects me as an enthusiast.
So any more overall comments on...
I don't think this park is ready to open in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think it's anywhere close, and it's going to be a shit show for months. And even our friends that work at the park.
But what park is not?
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Do I feel like they didn't give themselves enough time? No, I feel like there's never enough time. It's not like, I don't know. I feel like that they gave themselves a reasonable timeline to do all of this, and it still just took a long time. And I think I just don't know if they're as ready as they think they are. I think they really thought that maybe, I think 2 months ago, they thought that they would be showing up May 22nd, ready to go, well-oiled, solid, but they're still stumbling a lot.
Yeah, Ministry is going to be the biggest headache, I think, because that is lucky to run 3 hours a day. If at all, it's lucky to run 2-3 hours a day. So that's going to be a struggle. But I will say, since we even started going, I've seen it improve significantly. But I'm excited for the park. I look forward to seeing where it goes in the future. I'll probably stay away a little bit just because I don't necessarily want to deal with the chaos. Unless a good ticket deal fell into my lap, and I would love to go back. I like the park a lot. I need some more Stardust rides,
especially at night.
At night, because when we tried doing it at night, it was closed all day.
Right now, it's a huge conundrum with, I guess the last couple of weeks with Ministry opening at 3:00 and being down for hours, and
now it's going to go down for a week.
People blow their whole evenings, or have been. Yeah, now it won't even matter. Now the last week of previews, it won't even be open. But people have blown their whole evenings trying to get on Ministry when it's the nicest time of day to be in Epic Universe is twilight, golden hour, sundown kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pity that the way that things are shaking out right now with Ministry, that so many people have just been cooped up in the Ministry of Magic trying to get on this ride.
I'm just really hoping that and sooner or later, maybe pretty soon, they get to a point where they can just drop the VQ and it's open all day, and then like Gringotts, like Forbidden Journey, like Haggard, yes, it'll have a long line. It's gonna have a long line, but it's one of those rides. I think it's worth it. I think in the Universal Harry Potter Dark Ride or just ride lexicon, for me, I think it's the best ride objectively that they've ever done for Harry Potter.
Yeah,
it is just so beautiful. Do I personally maybe I prefer Forbidden Journey just because it's the nostalgia and the ride system, and I like those.
That's a great example of you liking something better even when something else is objectively better.
But it's very high for me. It's a toss up between the original and Ministry of Magic, the latest. And even though I love roller coasters, there's no way you can make Hagrid as polished as you can make this. This thing is just so polished. It's really the standout
polish
for the park.
Is the word for that ride for Ministry. It is a lacquered experience. It makes Monsters it highlights the way that Monsters needs to be tightened up, because being in the same park as Ministry of Magic, every ride needs to be tight. And Mario Kart is very polished too.
Yeah.
It's very tight.
It's just the art style.
So,
because for me, the problem is never with the art style of Monsters, just the execution.
Yeah.
But for Potter, the art style and execution are just flawless almost, which is really great. So with that, we want to welcome you to our new season 6, Coast Kings Radio. This season we're doing things a little bit differently. You may see some of our media online, so follow us on social media for snippets of podcast episodes, all that kind of good stuff. If you like this episode or like us in general, leave a good review on Spotify podcasts, Apple Podcasts. And we appreciate that. Follow us on social media. Check out thecoasterkings.com for lots of photos of Epic Universe. And we'll catch you guys in another episode.
Bye. Bye.